I don't even really like pecan pie, but whenever I see this thing, I go in, okay? Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Marta and I am the chef and author of Sense and Edibility, a site where I teach you everything I know about cooking, baking, and cocktail making. And today's video is all about how to make my maple pecan pie with bourbon and chocolate chunks. But before we get into the video, as always, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel. Sign up for notifications so that you can get notified every time I post a new video like this one. This is one of the recipes that uses my mealy pie dough, which I shared a video for a few weeks, 2 weeks ago. I'm gonna link it later on in the video so that you have it. And yeah, let's get into the video. For this recipe, you're going to need half a batch of my mealy pie dough. You can also use store-bought dough. You just need one sheet or one pie shell. What I do when I'm making this pie with homemade dough is I warm up the edges of the disc by pinching it between my fingers and the palm of my hand. And this reduces the amount of cracking that you get when you roll out your dough. Now liberally dust your countertop with all-purpose or cake flour. And you want to dust the top of your disc of dough and rub some flour onto your rolling pin as well. When I'm rolling out my dough, I always try to make sure that I'm moving the disc of dough around and I'm pinching together any cracks that form in the dough or on the edges of the dough. Moving it around frequently keeps it from sticking to your countertop and ripping when you go to lift it up. Now, after I roll my disc of dough out to between 12 and 14 inches, I roll it back onto my rolling pin, dust off excess flour, and then I unroll it back over the pie plate. So this is a 10-inch pie plate, and I rolled out my dough to 14 inches because I really like crust. And all I'm doing now is I'm taking my knuckle and I'm pressing the dough into the bottom of the pie plate. This keeps your dough from shrinking back excessively as it bakes. Now, because I said I like crust, I fold under excess dough. Now, if you have a lot of dough, you don't want to fold under too much of it because it won't bake properly. And after I've folded it under, I just pinch it together to secure it to the pie plate as well as to the top of the dough. So, I folded it under and I pinched it together. Now, I flute my pie crust pretty simply. I form a V with my left hand or my non-dominant hand, and I push the dough into that V with my thumb of my dominant hand or my right hand. So this is how I flute my pie crust. And then if you want to get even fancier, pinch the U part of that flute to make a star pattern or a floral pattern. This is a simple technique that you can use to flex on all your friends and family. Show them how great you are at pastries. Refrigerate this for 20 minutes to allow the dough time to firm up. And after 20 minutes, tear off a rectangular sheet of parchment paper, or a square shape if you can cut one properly. I obviously can't. Fold the parchment paper in half. Fold the bottom half up to the top half. And then you're going to fold it into a triangle. I don't even know how to describe this, but you're going to form a triangle like I just did. Now, grab your pie shell, and what you want to do is point the tip of that triangle to the center of the pie shell. Place your scissors about 1.5 inches from the pie shell, and then cut a little curve in your parchment paper. Now, what this does is it creates a liner for your pastry or your pie shell that you're going to use to protect your pie shell as we blind bake it. But before we get to that, we need to take the tines of a fork and pierce venting holes in the pastry. Now what this does, it keeps the pastry from blistering too much or excessively as it bakes. And if we didn't do this, then it would become one giant bubble. So now what I'm doing is I'm creasing the paper so that it sits at the bottom of this pie shell nice and flat. And these are what I use to weigh down my parchment paper, pie beans. These are just dried pinto beans that I bought on sale for like 70 cents a bag, and I use it to weigh down my parchment paper. You can also use ceramic pie weights or sugar to do the same thing. I use dried beans because they're much cheaper than ceramic pie weights, and I can reuse them more often than granulated sugar. Use whatever you feel most comfortable with and just fill your parchment paper with your weights. Now what I'm doing is I'm creasing the ripples in my parchment paper to make sure that my beans, my weights come in contact with my pastry, because the way this particular pastry is made, it's meant to be flaky. So blisters are inevitable, but if I press my weights down properly, they won't be as bad. You're gonna bake this in a 425-degree oven for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, remove the parchment and the weights from the pie shell. Allow these beans to cool before you store them or they'll develop mold. Grab that fork and open up those holes that kind of closed up while it was par baking, and return it to the oven to bake for another 10 minutes. Take the pie shell out of the oven, decrease the oven temperature to 350 degrees, and use a wooden spoon to press back the pastry that blistered up. I don't poke holes in the side because I don't want my slices of pie to fall apart when I cut my pie. All right, move this over and grab a large mixing bowl and add unsalted room temperature butter, brown sugar, kosher salt, and ground cinnamon to the bowl. With an electric hand mixer or a stand mixer, you're going to beat this on medium-high speed for 3 to 4 minutes. And during this mixing time, you want to stop and scrape down the bowl in the beaters twice. After you've whipped that for 3 minutes, you're going to add room temperature large eggs to the mixture in the mixing bowl. My eggs always give me a hard time. Yeah, story of my life. Okay, now you want to mix these in at medium-high speed until it is incorporated before you add the next egg. After the third egg, you're going to notice that your mixture looks curdled. That's because we're adding more liquid than fat at this point, and it's all going to work out in the end. Just trust me on this one. Increase the speed to high and whip the mixture until it looks like a mousse. See, it looks like peanut butter mousse. Now I'm adding the maple syrup and the bourbon. The bourbon is in here with the maple syrup. And if you don't have bourbon, you can always use whatever whiskey you have on hand. Add vanilla extract to the ingredients in the bowl, and you're going to blend this in at low speed. And again, because we added so much liquid, it's going to look curdled. Add your chopped pecans and your chopped dark chocolate to the bowl, and you're going to use a rubber spatula or a spoon to fold them in until fully incorporated. Now this filling is going to produce a fudgy kind of caramelly filling, so that's why we want it to look the way it does. Scrape it into the pastry shell that you blind baked earlier. And this is something you don't have to do, but I like doing it because it makes it look pretty. I take pecan halves and I just decorate the top of my pie. Look how cute, it's so cute. Bake your pie in your preheated 350-degree oven for 35 to 40 minutes and voila. Look how pretty it looks. Now blind baking your pie shell, that process that we did before, just helps ensure that your pastry, your pie dough, is super crisp and flaky at the end. You are putting it under a custard, so a liquidy custard, so you don't want it to be soggy and unbaked. And what I do to add even more indulgence is I just add more chopped chocolate to the top of the pastry after it comes out of the oven, and it just kind of melts and creates these puddles of chocolate. Now, if you want a slice that holds its shape like this one, you need to let it cool for at least 2 hours, but I definitely recommend like overnight. Whatever you do, wait at least 30 minutes before cutting into it, or it's just going to ooze all over the place. I mean, I really strongly recommend just letting it cool for 2 hours, but look at the way the crust looks. Blind baking makes all the difference. You know I always got to do a floating pie shot. Now remember when I said I love a gooey pecan pie. I almost cussed. Oh my word, I almost cussed. You can't taste bourbon. If I were to give you this pie, you would never know that there was bourbon in it. But it has a tang that complements and cuts through the sweetness of the brown sugar and the maple syrup. The nuts are still crunchy, so you have texture. The pie dough, you can't really see it because of the filling. Blends in with the color of the pie dough, but it's still crisp on the bottom, which is why we use mealy pie dough. And using semi-sweet or even bittersweet chocolate cuts through all the sweetness as well. I think it's perfect, but I'm biased. Let me finish enjoying what I'm eating, and I'll come back and answer some frequently asked questions I get about this maple pecan pie with bourbon and chocolate chunks. pecan, pecan, pecan. There's so many different ways that people pronounce the word pecan that even in my own family we're divided. Linguistic fact. The word pecan comes from the Algonquin word for this nut, which is pecan. So if you say pecan, you are correct. I live in Texas. Pecan is the state nut of Texas. Here in Texas, and specifically in the part of Texas where I live was Comanche land. I think it's very important for everybody that lives in the United States to know whose land you are on, indigenous people's land you are on. We live in Comanche land, but the word pecan comes from the Algonquin languages. So if you say pecan, you now know that the Algonquins disagree with you, and it's their language and it's their word, so it's pecan. And I'm not gonna fight over it because I know I'm right, because I do research. The reason why pie doughs matter is because you saw how liquidy, how fluid the filling was before I poured it into the pie dough. I also took a lot of precautions in making sure I still had a crisp pie dough that didn't fall apart once I sliced my pie by blind baking my pie dough. Blind baking a pie dough kind of is like a jump start for making sure you have a nice, crisp, flaky pie dough at the end of baking. I really recommend doing that, especially if you're working with custard pies. Now, the pie dough that I use for custard pies, like pumpkin or pecan or sweet potato, is mealy pie dough, and that is specifically because I want to create a waterproof barrier between the pie dough and the actual filling. I hate soggy, mushy pie dough at the bottom. It's an irrational loathing that I have. But as a pastry chef, it kind of isn't as irrational as if like a mechanic was so adamantly against soggy pie dough. Maybe. I mean, some mechanics care, but I don't think most mechanics care. That being said, you can use the store-bought pie dough for this recipe. You could also use my flaky pie dough recipe, which I'll link right here. Just know the possibility of it being more soggy or not being kind of having that gummy layer underneath the filling is higher. You have a higher percentage of experiencing that than you do if you use the mealy pie dough. But I want you to be able to make this pie. If that takes a store-bought pie crust, you do you and do it well. I'll still be proud of you and you'll still love it. I don't use corn syrup because I don't use corn syrup. I don't use light or dark corn syrup to make my pecan pie. It's not like, I'm not like outside petitioning or protesting against corn syrup. It's just something that I'm not going to use in this pie because I know maple syrup tastes much better. I would even use honey over light corn syrup because I feel that it tastes better in the pie. If you want to, you can use dark corn syrup. You can replace the maple syrup in this recipe with dark corn syrup. No, it's going to be sweeter. Corn syrup just is high fructose corn syrup. So it's going to taste sweeter than maple syrup, which is another reason why I use maple syrup, because I like the subtle sweetness of maple syrup. We also have the brown sugar in it, so I don't like a cloyingly sweet anything. I'm not a huge fan of cloyingly sweet desserts or anything. So that's why I use maple syrup in this. But you can replace it with dark corn syrup if you want to. Varieties of pecans, just get whatever they sell. Wow. Just get whatever they sell in the baking aisle or the nut aisle of your grocery store. Here's a tip. The nuts that they sell in the baking aisle come in bigger packages than the nuts that they sell in the snacking aisle. So where they have nuts like snack nuts, trail mix, and all that stuff. Those packages are smaller and often more expensive than the larger bulk bags of nuts that are found in the baking aisle. send me a birthday card for that one because that was free. Use the pecans that you can afford. I encourage people when they bake or cook to be efficient. To me, efficiency means if you're going to use pecan halves in any of your recipes, buy pecan halves. If you're a bowler and you got a lot of money, buy whatever you want to buy. Buy chopped pecans and pecan halves. For me, I like my money to stay in my bank account or in my wallet, so I buy pecan halves because I use them, as you can see, to decorate the sides. I also use pecan halves because I use them in other recipes like spiced nuts and stuff like that. I can chop a pecan half. I can't make chopped pecans halves again. You understand what I'm saying? So I recommend buying pecan halves, chopping them if you have the ability to do so. Now, if you don't have the dexterity or use of your hands, or if you have arthritis or something that compromises your ability to chop the pecans and you don't have anybody willing to help you, you can always process them just a few pulses in a food processor or a blender to get them broken down. If you can't do that, buy them chopped. So, long answer short, buy pecan halves if you can, and if not, chopped pecans will work. Use bourbon that you can drink from a glass. It doesn't have to be top shelf bourbon. Like, I'm not gonna go and raid my husband's bourbon collection to get the amount of bourbon I need for this pie. If I'm mad at him, I probably would do that. But I'm trying not to be petty these days. Buy a middle shelf bourbon that actually tastes like something. It's not like gut rot. It's not bottom shelf bourbon. This is something that's being baked into something with a lot of other flavors. So you want something that's middle of the road but not nasty. You see what I'm saying? I'm not going to mention any brand names. Middle of the road bourbon is fine. You don't have to spend a lot of money on this bourbon. Just make sure it tastes good if you drink it alone. Maple syrup and pancake syrup are not the same thing. If you look at the label for most pancake syrups, the first ingredient is high fructose corn syrup. So that means you're basically using corn syrup. And you might as well just use dark corn syrup in this recipe. I know maple syrup is expensive, but if you can afford to buy maple syrup for this recipe, please do so. Number one, because it's in the name. It's a maple pecan pie. If the budget doesn't allow for maple syrup, just use dark corn syrup, because that's all pancake syrup is, with some caramel color and some butter flavoring added. Skip all that. Just go straight for the corn syrup because it's going to be less expensive than the maple syrup, I think. I haven't bought maple syrup in a long time. That's how much I despise it. But I prefer to use semi-sweet or dark chocolate. I'm talking 60 to 70% dark chocolate because it contrasts the sweetness of the brown sugar and the maple syrup so well. If you're a fan of milk chocolate, your pie is going to be sweeter. It's semi-sweet, it's going to be middle of the road, but it's not going to be bad. It's not going to be like super sweet. That being said, if you don't like chocolate, you can leave the chocolate out. It won't affect the pie at all. Another thing, if you don't want to chop your own chocolate, use chocolate chips. You can use the same amount of chocolate chips in this recipe. They tend to sink to the bottom of the pie filling, so that's why I avoid them and I don't really recommend them. But if you can't chop chocolate, then it's an alternative. I kind of use like a little bit more than 3/4. If you're going to use chocolate chips, use a cup. Use a cup of chocolate chips. We talked about maple syrup versus corn syrup. I understand that people abstain from alcohol for whatever reason. You can leave the bourbon out of this recipe and it will still be amazing. It won't change. It may change the consistency a smidge, making it a little bit thicker because we're taking out some of the liquid. But that is not a bad thing. If you only have dark brown sugar, use dark brown sugar. If you only have light brown sugar, use light brown sugar. Don't use white sugar. Doesn't work the same way because we want that molasses and we want the soft texture that brown sugar and dark brown sugar give to the filling. You can't change the pecans, right? Because it's a pecan pie. So, I mean, if you want to change it to walnuts, it becomes a walnut pie. I don't think that would be bad. I actually think that would be really good. So, but it becomes a walnut pie. So, yeah, there's that. I want to show you how to decorate things if that's what you choose to do. If you don't have the time, the effort, the energy, or the desire to do it, you don't have to do that at all. No, I do it because I like to flex on people. I mean, I like to show people that I actually have a degree in pastry. So that's it. It's arrogance on my part. I'll admit it. And I'm ashamed now. But you don't have to do that. You don't have to be like me. Be better. Be better than me. Whatever you do, do not cut this maple pecan pie as soon as you take it out of the oven. Don't even cut it for the first 2 hours out of the oven. I recommend you do this either the day before, you bake this pie the day before or early in the day that you plan to make it, because as you saw, well, I don't know if you saw, but when I put it down, the pie filling was still kind of moving around. That's because we had inverted sugar all over the place in this pie. What happens is if you take it out of the oven and go to cut it immediately, it's going to ooze, right? Because that's what it wants to do. It needs time to chill. It needs time to firm back up. It's a custard, so it needs time to set up. And if we don't give it that time, it's going to ooze all over the place. Bake your pie early in the day or the day before. Put it in the fridge and let it just chill out before you go cutting it. If you go cutting it right out of the oven, do not comment that it was a failure, because that's not my bad. That's yours. That's all I'm saying. Technically, you can cut it after 30 minutes of allowing it to cool. I say that because you can do it, right? If you like, especially if you like gooey, like almost runny pecan pie, that's when you can cut it. I recommend letting it chill or cool for at least 2 hours before you go cutting it, which makes sense. I mean, I think that's a good time, because if you're serving it at a holiday event, you can, bake it before your guests even think about getting dressed to come to your house, and then let it cool. And then by the time dessert comes around, it's ready to cut. But I really recommend baking it the day before or baking it early in the day, chilling it and letting it really solidify so that you get this nice. It has not dripped a single bit since we've been sitting here talking. And it won't, because I allowed it to cool and I made it right. And you will too, because you're amazing. Serve pecan pie however you want to. I think room temperature is the perfect way to serve any pecan pie. It is perfect. Hot, obviously, I don't agree with, because I don't like fluid, super gooey pecan pie. I don't like cold just because I think it's a travesty to this pie. You can serve it however you feel comfortable serving it, but do not serve it within 30 minutes of pulling it out of the oven. That's the only rule I have for you with my maple pecan pie. This is just like pumpkin pie and sweet potato pie. It is a custard that is made with eggs. I recommend covering it and storing it in the refrigerator to be on the safe side, especially if you have elders or young children or people with compromised immune systems who are going to want to enjoy this pie. You don't want to put them at risk for anything. So it's better to err on the side of caution and store your pie wrapped in the refrigerator. If you are like me and you like your pecan pie served warm or at room temperature, you can always pull it out like 20 or 30 minutes before you plan to serve it, and even heat it in the microwave for like 15 to 30 seconds if you need it to be warm. But I always tell people to err on the side of caution, especially if you're serving this at a holiday dinner with a bunch of people who have different things going on. You can wrap it in plastic wrap or aluminum foil, store it in the fridge for 3 to 4 days. That gets more life out of it too if you store it in the refrigerator. If you're storing it at room temperature, you're gonna have to throw it away within 24 to 48 hours. Because like you're delving into some real bacterial issues. And if you choose to store it at room temperature, I take no responsibility for you not listening to me and you doing your own thing. Store it in the refrigerator 3 to 4 days or at room temperature for 1 day. You can actually freeze this pie both before and after baking it. If you want to freeze it before baking, what I actually recommend this for both before and after baking. Freeze it uncovered, no plastic wrap, no nothing. What that does is sets everything up so that when you go to wrap it in plastic film, it's already solid. You don't have to worry about crushing anything or, pushing down on the oozy filling and messing anything up. So freeze it first until it's completely solid. Wrap it in 2 layers of plastic film. You can add a layer of heavy duty foil if that's what your heart is telling you to do. And then freeze it in the freezer for 2 months, for up to 2 months, if it's unbaked. If it's baked, you can go 2, 3, 4 months maybe. I feel like 3 months is tops, but that's just me. Now for unbaked pecan pie, you're going to have to thaw it out in the refrigerator for 24 hours. Then you're going to bake it as instructed. If you froze a baked maple pecan pie, you can just unwrap it and defrost it or thaw it in the refrigerator for, again, 24 hours. If you want to, kind of heat it up just a little bit, you can heat it up in an air fryer at 300 degrees for about 5 minutes. You can heat it up in the oven at 170 degrees. That's more like warming it. 70 degrees for about 15 minutes. Or you could just serve it cold. I absolutely think I have answered every single question that I have ever gotten about this pie. I'm trying to think if there's any more. So this is how I make my maple pecan pie with bourbon and chocolate chunks. I don't use chocolate chips because I'm about that chocolate life. So I do hope that you try out this recipe for the holidays or for just a Wednesday, whenever you want to make it. If you do try it out, please let me know in the comments below if you liked it. You can also let me know you liked it by giving me a thumbs up on this video and sharing it with your friends and family. Don't forget, before you check out and explore the rest of YouTube, to sign up for notifications for my channel and subscribe to my channel. It just helps, me further what I'm trying to do in teaching people recipes and techniques and things like that. I really appreciate you watching. I really appreciate you being a part of my community. I will see you on the next video. Take care and bye.